and welcome to The Bottom Line on TVP World. This is where we break down some of the main business and economic stories of the day. I'm your host, Marie Cato. The European car industry might just feel it is getting a break. Finally, the EU Commission has announced that it will relax its CO2 emissions regulations, giving the car industry more time to adapt to new realities. Let's go to Jan Kennedy for the lowdown.
Finally, some good news for European car manufacturers. The Council of the European Union has adopted a more lenient version of its CO2 emissions regulations. To allow the automotive industry time to adjust and meet the new targets, the rules now consider the average emissions over a 3-year period between 2025 and 2027, rather than a single year's data.
It will still be challenging to now close that gap in just 2 years, but it's important and it will give some breathing space for industry to keep the transition going.
The original targets were legally binding, meaning that failure to comply could have resulted in fines of up to 15 billion euros for the whole sector. The shift comes at a time when electric vehicle registrations in Europe have declined amidst an overall drop in car demand in 2024. And some experts say that the watered-down objectives will undermine the decarbonisation efforts.
It is estimated that around 1 million electric vehicles will not be brought to market as a result of this weakening of the CO2 target.
That said, EV registrations have started to rebound this year, accounting for 15% of total sales in the first 4 months of 2025. While combustion engine car sales are forecasted to increase this year, this trend is not expected to continue in 2027.
At this point, we will definitely see the sales of combustion engine cars this year and next year remain very high. But in 2027, we will most likely witness a major shift as manufacturers strive to meet their emission targets.
Cheap electric cars will be a crucial factor behind this increase. While the low price range is currently dominated by Chinese-made cars, experts say that European automakers will put up a fight.
Volkswagen, but also the French car companies like Citroën or the Italian like Fiat want to build such cheap electric car because they know that this is a market segment that is able to increase the volumes of electromobility in Europe.
And in 2025, the European industry delivered, with small electric cars like Fiat Grande Panda and Renault 5 finally hitting the dealerships. The economies of Central and Eastern European countries are intrinsically linked to the well-being of the European car industry, with the region hosting manufacturing sites and supply chains for the biggest players in the industry, or, as in the case of Czech automaker Skoda, whole brands. In Slovakia, for instance, the automotive industry accounted for nearly 7% of gross value added in 2023, followed closely by the Czech Republic, while Romania and Hungary reported contributions of over 4% and Poland over 3%. Although the European Commission decided to accommodate some of the industry's demands, the overall direction of European policy remains the same. By 2035, Brussels wants no new gasoline cars sold in the EU. This policy, however, will be reviewed in 2026.
So has the European car industry persuaded the EU Commission, having lobbied hard enough and long enough? Or has the EU Commission realized that a bit of flexibility will go a long way? Or does the current economic situation in Europe for the EU Commission to slow down with its strategies? To discuss the significance of this recent decision, we are now joined by Piotr Wyderski, car industry analyst at the Polish Automotive Group, an association of auto parts manufacturers. Hello, and thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, everyone.
So let's begin with the European car industries having lobbied the EU Commission for a long time to slow down a bit with the CO2 emissions regulations. Now that the Commission has adopted this, what does it mean and what does it signal?
The demands from automotive European market and suppliers or like producers were much higher. So we were expecting that the European Union will give a bit more to the European OEMs. In the end, we are still in the same road to reach the goal of being fit for 55. But for what does it mean for automotive market is to be, zero emission in 2035. So we had from 2021 the same emission goals up to 2025. Now it was supposed to be 15% lower year by year. What we got is those 3 years in which one our, and not only ours, but European market could average the amount of CO2 emission for each vehicle. So this is, let's say, small breath for each one of them. But in the end, is it enough? In my opinion, it's not. And I'm expecting that our companies will still lobby in European Union to get it even lower, or to, let's say, move the date of 2035 to, for example, 2040. Because what we are seeing on the market at the moment is that in Q1 2025, we had on one side the biggest EV sales compared to the previous years, but amount of the market which was taken by European suppliers.
Before we talk about the EVs, let me just interrupt you. Before we get to the EVs, I just wanted to ask you, because you say we're still heading towards Fit for 55. So I wanted to ask you, this slowdown, shall we say, what does it signal about the Green Deal, or perhaps the overall approach to the EU's environmental agenda? Does it suggest perhaps that the EU is realizing that it's taken on too much, or perhaps in light of the increasing weight of the economic challenges that are coming on from within and from abroad, that it just has to slow down? Because I'm sensing a little bit of understandable skepticism.
We hope so. We hope so. It will change in the next few years. So by change, I mean that the targets will be lowered down again, because of the fact that if we will check how the European market is looking and compare it to the Chinese market, for example, then the European automotive companies were for many years producing also diesels or like petrol engine. So we are still selling those. So that means that zero emissions or like emissions target for European companies are a bit tougher and more difficult to achieve compared to the Chinese companies, which started from electrical vehicles. And does it mean that they are zero emission from the start? We have to lower the amount of petrol engine cars we are selling in Europe, and the market is not helping. So on one side, demands from European Commission is to lower down the emission. On the other side, the customers, sure, the amount of vehicles, electrical vehicles bought by customers is rising, but it's not enough. And this is the answer from European Union at the moment. They were seeing that the amount of vehicles sold like in last few years wasn't enough to meet the market, to meet the target. And that's the reason why they average the next 3 years. And they hope that that will mean that in those 3 years, the amount of EV on the market, percentage of the market of vehicles which was bought will go higher, so that the companies will achieve it. But in my opinion, it's difficult to do so. So I'm hoping and expecting that in next few years, so I mean in 2026, we will get a bit more from Commission.
Speaking of I suppose the most difficult part of this EU green transport strategy, this total ban on sales of internal combustion cars in 2035. I suppose this is the most challenging part from your perspective. This has remained untouched, but the Commission says that it will be reviewed in 2026. Do you think that that's the way it's going to stay, or do you think that there is some room for maneuver?
As a Pole, I hope there is still place for negotiations, because from one side we have to take a look how the market is looking in Germany or France, where the factories are like producing e-vehicles, and how does it look like in Poland. So we are still country in which one we are mostly producing petrol combustion engine vehicles. So, it will be difficult for us. We will need a lot of investment to change what we are doing in Poland. So I'm expecting and hoping that also our government will push a bit more to make small changes in this target we have. So I mean by that 2035 zero emission goal.
But do you think that that goal is actually realistic? And speaking to you now as a consumer, how many of your contacts actually drive EVs?
So that's great questions. In my opinion, maybe as a poll, we are not the best, let's say, society to ask about it, because in Poland,
but we are members
it's still
of the EU.
Sure, we are, but in the end, the lobby in this area is more in Germany or France. But answering your question, it's I will have to say that it's around 10% of people I know which are driving EV cars, and there is only 10 years to change from 10 to 100%, or maybe other way. In those 10 years, we won't be available or allowed to buy combustion engine vehicles. But what does it mean for us?
Do you think it's a realistic goal?
No. I hope so. I'm not right, but I'm really not thinking that it's really realistic goal for like next decade.
And so if that's not a realistic goal, what does that mean for car manufacturers? What does that mean for the European economy? What does it mean for a country like Poland?
I think that first of all, we have to answer this question from society perspective. This means that we will be pushed to do so, because if European Union don't change what they are expecting from the people, that means that they will push more money and they will push more money to the people to convince them to buy EV cars. But on the other side, usually lifetime product life cycle, as we are speaking about cars, is around 8 years. So we are at the moment in 2025. So people which are still buying combustion engine cars will still do this for like next 10 years, and getting zero emission 2055 and stop selling in 2035. And that will mean only trouble for like our part of Europe, mostly because of the fact that we don't have great infrastructure. So there is still a lack of places where we can charge cars. That's on the one side. On the other side, if we will look how does it, from where we have energy in Poland, and when we are expecting to have, for example, atom in Poland, this will mean that it will be difficult from many perspectives to reach the goal, and in the future it also won't be so cheap as we are expecting.
Big chunks of the Central and Eastern European economy are reliant on the fortunes of the European car industry. So should we actually cheer on every measure that it props up?
Not really. I'm not expecting so. It's sure a big part of European economy is done by automotive market, but on the other side, when we are looking the direction in which one is going and what kind of atmosphere is in European market at the moment, it's like we are taking part in R&D programs in Europe, and at the moment it's we are in the state in which one really big companies, every OEMs are thinking what should they do in the next future. Because on one side we are still speaking about 2035, 2030, what we need to achieve, what are the goals, but on the other side, if we will look, like most of the brands from Europe, year to year, they didn't have really good first quarter, mostly because of the Trump tariffs. And on one side, Trump tariffs doesn't help because we can't plan what to do in the following years, especially in terms of R&D. So there is a lot of chaos at the moment on the market. There is a lot of being scared to make decisions, and this means that the market value, the entire sector, it will shrink in next year, mostly because of the fact that Chinese are getting strong.
Absolutely. Now, I just want to bring in a little bit of a case study comparison and get your thoughts on that. What happens to Europe when it comes to transport, when it stands in stark contrast to what's happening in the US? So there, the Senate recently passed a law barring in California, other states from enacting internal combustion bans. So on the other hand, according to the International Energy Agency, the sales of EVs in China now amount to around half of all the cars sold. So what are your thoughts on that?
So, for sure, China is, let's say, different state of this sector, mostly because of the fact that most of Chinese brands are growing. The society in China knows that their producers are selling only EVs, and this is one part of the rapid growth in China, that they are also, like each of the country, trying to buy their product, and China will only grow faster, and they will be always on the top of the market in terms of what kind of percentage of EV cars is like total on the market. And European Union is sure a bit different because of the fact that we have plenty of different countries, and each one of them is in different position. But basically comparing it also, thinking what happened in United States in last few years. From one side, we need to see that the first quarter was a pretty good one for EV cars, and especially for European producer. But it's not because of the fact that something changed in society or demands from people. It mostly changed because of what we spoke last time about Tesla, is that we also switched to buy European product, especially in premium area, and that's why VW in this year, in the first quarter, had really best selling target. What they got the best selling values compared to what they have in last year, and this is mostly because of the fact that the Tesla went down by 40% in Europe. Not because of the fact that VW product got better, because they didn't.
Oh, very interesting. Okay, we're going to have to wrap up our conversation there. Piotr Wyderski, car industry analyst at the Polish Automotive Group, an association of auto parts manufacturers. Thanks so much for all that insight.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
And that concludes The Bottom Line. Today, I was your host, Marie Cato. We bring you the best of regional business Monday to Friday at 5:10 CET on TVP World. And in the meantime, for the latest in regional business, follow us on X and on tvpworld.com. And for more news and analysis, stay with us on TVP World. Goodbye.